All right, let's go ahead and kick it off. So I appreciate everybody taking some time to join us here this morning. Our goal today is to kind of educate a little bit, show some of the new features of the Zoros platform that we've moved forward with, and then also make sure that we kind of cover some of the DNS core components, where it sits, and we'll kind of go from there. Our agenda, like I said, we'll do some intros. We're going to do a very brief DNS management run through. There's not a lot to DNS management for those on the IT side that are on here. It can be a pretty dry and boring topic. For those more on the finance ownership side, there's just not a lot to the DNS management component. Cyber Insights, which is the employee productivity and the employee monitoring software component of the Zoros platform. And then, like I said, we'll have a couple minutes for some Q&A. So just a quick introduction. DNS management has really become a requirement in both proactive and reactive sense with security incidents. It's not just, hey, I want to prevent it. It also is used and heavily influenced when a response to an incident. We're going to kind of discuss the matrix and how we kind of view products here in a moment. That Cyber Insights is essentially a new feature set that can be brought. It's really looking at activity time. It's really looking at applications, both from a sense of what site somebody's visiting, but also how much time they're actually spending on that particular site. So the cyber defense matrix, we thought it was really important to kind of briefly share how Ontech really evaluates, looks at, discusses tools and platforms. So Ontech did not create this. Cyber defense matrix was created by Sunil Yu, a very big name in the IT space, specifically in the MSP, the managed service provider industry. But the cyber defense matrix basically is really meant to be a simplified way to discuss your security strategy. So on the top side, that first dimension, you have the NIST framework: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. So identify assets, applications, systems, protect those devices, detect in the event something happens, respond, clearly respond to what happened, and then recover, get something back to a normal state or a previously known good state. That second dimension on the left-hand side, when we look at a network, obviously Ontech, we support government through insurance, through manufacturing, financial services. It's really hard to discuss all the intricacies or nuances of each of those particular business types. But what this dimension does is really extrapolates out all of that nuance, and every network is made up of devices, applications, network, meaning physical infrastructure, data, and users. And then on the bottom, we have degree of dependency. Really what this is meant to showcase is as you move through an incident, or you move through that NIST framework, in the upfront part, we want technology, we want automation to accomplish it. As you move to a recovery effort, that's going to take people. There's a ton of use cases for the matrix, but Ontech's core reason is we look at it and we kind of look at where do we have products and where do they sit. So as an example, the Zoros platform can sit in a couple different areas here. The first is it definitely sits in the protection of devices. So that DNS management component of it, we're attempting to facilitate and structure where that device can browse to. It can also detect. So did a user attempt to go somewhere that was potentially malicious or had bad content on it? And then it also is looking at and identifying users and users' behaviors and habits. As Ontech continues to revamp some of our account management strategies, you'll start to see this matrix more and more from us in terms of how we discuss security with you. One last thing I always like to bring up as we talk about security is the security versus convenience exchange rate. And whether you call it a rate, a pendulum, essentially insert whatever term. But really, when you look at it, the more secure we make something, it's not going to be as convenient. The more convenient we make something, traditionally, it's not as secure. There's a balance that needs to be struck between user, operations, and IT. And every organization is going to be a little bit different in what that exchange rate looks like and what we can accomplish or want to accomplish. So a quick DNS management walkthrough. This is going to be a pretty oversimplified explanation of DNS management, but it's really going to get the point across. At the end of the day, if for the IT people that are on here, if you really want to dive into policy more and categorization, we can set up some time to really get into that. But for simplicity's sake, we're really enforcing policies. And so a policy, what does it mean? It's basically what I'm allowing that endpoint to do. So those that have the Zoros agent on their system, we have 3 core policies, and we copied some of this from the WebRoot product we were on before, but we tried to simplify this more and more. So our first policy is basically we're really not content filtering anything. We are security filtering, meaning we're looking with sites with botnets, keyloggers, spyware, but we're not actually looking at any content that's within those pages. We're kind of just allowing any content to flow through. Policy 2, we're doing all the stuff in policy 1, but then we're also blocking adult content, dating, hate, slander, terrorism. We're blocking specific content types. Some of those content types are chosen purposely due to malicious content is traditionally encompassed within them. Some of them are just general best practice. And then that third policy, there's more sections in there that we block than what I listed here, but it's basically dialing up that second policy to a substantially higher viewpoint. Most users don't actually know that we're running this in the background unless they get to the page that's blocked. So I know from our email we had sent this out, but kind of just a reminder for both you as an administrator and a user, if a user goes to a page that we're filtering, they're basically going to get this little message over here. The web page is blocked. If the user goes to request access to the page, that actually opens up a ticket on our side to go out, look at the website, the link, whatever they're requesting, and then try to make a decision on if we think that's something that we should allow versus not. Most users don't have malicious intent when they're out kind of on the web and browsing and doing stuff, but sometimes they can get a little click happy. And so one of the core things that we're doing when somebody requests access to this is there's 3 pieces that we're really trying to identify. The first being, is this a legitimate website, legitimate source? Is it not spoofed? Is it not somebody trying to impersonate something else? The second component is what's actually on the page that's being blocked or flagged as malicious. Ads are a really good example of that. So if you're on news sites or other sites that display a lot of ads, there are times where there's an ad that's actually malicious and the system will attempt to block that, or there's an ad that it is actually pushing out malicious content. And so we want to try to restrict or block that ad. The third component is really, do they need it to do their job? And at the end of the day, that's not an Ontech decision. That's always something that we're going to bring to you as a customer and an end user. Hey, is this something that somebody needs? Is this something that somebody's going to actually tangibly use? And then the system tray icon, for those that care, obviously this has been live now for a couple weeks, so if nobody's really asked about it, I don't anticipate seeing a ton of questions on it, but that is the little Zoros icon that's in the system tray, specifically on Windows. So Cyber Insights, we're going to spend a bulk of our time on this here this morning, mainly just because that's what most of you guys probably signed up for. So this is Cyber Insights, and in this case here, I've got this filtered down to just the Ontech site, and then I'm looking at Dave, one of my employees' computers, and then I'm looking at a specific date range. At the end of the day, I could look at a bunch of different computers. I could look at one individually. I could look at a date range of last 7 days, last 30 days. I can set custom. It really comes down to how you want to attempt to use this tool. So far, our dynamic with it has been, we're not necessarily using it yet for like full HR conversations, but we're slowly working our way up to that. So today, specifically here, we're looking at this week activity, and we're looking at potentially time spent. So on my left-hand panel, I'm basically seeing the top 10 websites that Dave has visited here today. So with that, I can see there's definitely some business stuff, ConnectWise, their ticketing system, AppRiver, Quozil, our quoting tool. But then there's also some potential business, potential not. So YouTube would be, as an example, something that we do use that for content, especially if you look at Dave's role as an account manager in business development. He may be creating videos, he may be sending videos to people. That could be a legitimate business use. It could be him doing something personal. The fantasy app, though, on ESPN, that would be a good example of clearly that's time spent towards a personal item. What we're doing here is it's looking at total time. And again, we're focused on this week. So understand this is yesterday and then this morning. We're looking at how much time we've spent in those particular websites. That second column, exactly what it says, it's looking at applications. So traditionally, again, we're working out of Teams, we're working out of Outlook. Not surprised to see a bulk of Dave's time focused on those two applications. Active time, just a call out, just so people understand, is when somebody is actively on their computer typing in screenshots, or excuse me, typing in keystrokes, browsing a screen. It'll bounce to idle after 15 seconds of like no activity on the screen. So as an example right now, if I were to go and open up a different Teams or an Outlook application and I wasn't clicking around in there, it's not going to count that as time towards that application. It's only when I'm in that window and I'm actively putting time and effort into that. Streaming time is calculated a little bit of a different way. So as an example here with like our webinar, Zoros assumes that if you're on a Teams call, a Zoom call, again, insert whatever streaming mechanism that you want in there, that you're still engaged in that, but you're not actually having the keystrokes, the screenshots, and that comes with standard active time. And we'll quick pop over to the other section, and so active versus idle and what some of that stuff means. Categories, in my opinion, the least useful out of this top section, but it's basically just categorizing sites and things that people are visiting. I mentioned before streaming activity. So as an example here for Dave, we see a lot in Chrome, which is his main web browser. I don't necessarily know what he had going on yesterday, but he's got significant time into that in Chrome. And then you can also see Microsoft Teams. So whether that's a call with a customer, call with a prospect, whatever that circumstance may be, he's logging time streaming in those. Dave only has one computer, so this is clearly only just looking at one particular device, and that's Dave's workstation. Active time trend, so this is where it looks at, again, those active time, meaning I physically am on the device, whether that's streaming or in applications. So if we look at Monday as an example, Dave had 5.75 hours of time into that particular, in that day. Tuesday here, I pulled this up, I don't know, maybe an hour and 15 minutes ago. But today he's at 2 hours of active time logged in on his computer. And this is going to vary user by user. So if I come in and grab Dan as an example, Dan's on PTO. So Dan's out this week. He's out late last week into this week. There's no active time on his computer. He hasn't booted up his computer. I can tell because there's no data found on his system. But then if I grab Ryan Custer on our project management side, we start to see some differences, both in terms of the user and what they're working on and the amount of time that they spend. So Ryan being a project manager as well as a sales engineer in tech for us, he's field facing, he's internal, he's got meetings. You would expect to see less time active in terms of his computer compared to somebody like Dave's. You also see some differences in terms of platforms and what he's going to. So LionGuard is another tool set of ours. Pax8 is a distributor partner of ours. Udemy is our training platform that he's working on standing up. So we start to see some differences in users based on that type of employee that they are. And this is going to be one of the biggest things if your organization wants to try to implement this. This is going to be one of the biggest things that you guys have to do as an org, is really start to look out and break people into employee types and what should you expect out of them. Making fun of Dave when we first kind of launched this tool, he had a lot of time on a particular video game that he was playing. Now, it turned out most of his time was actually outside business hours. So when we were looking at it in this active time trend here at the bottom in this panel, it's only looking at active time on the device. It's not differentiating the time of day. It's solely looking at active time spent on that particular device. On the flip side of it, if we go and look at, this is just a different segment in terms of the platform, but if we go over and look at Ontech in general in this view, we'll be able to get into more of a time view. Don't get me wrong, you're going to see a substantial amount of malicious and threats blocked because our security desk, specifically Amanda, who you can see right here as our top blocked endpoints, she's got to go through all the requests that our customers facilitate and push over to us. So there's times where she's definitely visiting less than savory sites. There's times that she's going to get restricted or blocked because she's attempting to investigate and look at those reports that customers are sending to us of, hey, I want to whitelist this. I want to be able to get into this, so on and so forth. But we can glean a couple of things from this page, specifically, block sites. What are people going to? Why are they going to it? It's a good conversation topic, basically. But activity logs, this is where we can start to see that time of day. So again, same thing here. I'm going to come in and grab Dave's machine, and let's grab yesterday to today. Let that update. It'll take a second to load because we're now actually pulling substantially more information about his device. But this is where we can start to see time and events put towards a particular device. So if we look at, as an example, Monday the 29th, I can see, I don't know why Dave was up here looking at this at probably sometime around 3 o'clock in the morning through a little bit before 4 p.m. Yesterday afternoon. We can dive in heavily to events and see specifically what people were doing, what websites they were going to. So here, machine lock. So he was logging into his machine, but then he really didn't start his workday until sometime around 7 o'clock. But this is going in basically almost minute by minute. Every event, every activity that's occurred on that device. You can export this over to Excel to make it a little bit easier to view. No offense to the web GUI, but it's not terrific in terms of that view pane. Traffic logs. This is where we can start to filter out. Both specifically here, we're looking at just Dave's endpoint, but we can start to really look at what's happening on a device. What are the event logs that are occurring? We can see if there's commonality between the logs. We can see, as an example, in a cyber attack, I talked about how this is predominantly used in a proactive sense. In a reactive sense, though, if machines are compromised, then you start to see commonality. So each endpoint is checking into a particular website. They're downloading a particular tool set from a particular website. This correlation allows you to then react to that incident faster. So instead of a person having to hope that they see something or get an alert, this can actually help correlate that data together for you. And then the last item to briefly call out is reports. So there are some automated reports that we can do. So Ontech, as an example here, I always like to use us. We've got 5 unique teams within the business. We've got service desk, field, admin, project management, and sales. So each leader receives a report every Friday afternoon of their team's time. They get a report of essentially those devices, what's happening and how it's going. And then it's on each leader to go have a conversation with the employee if they see or feel something that's out there that should be discussed. How HR chooses to interface with this at larger organizations. Again, Ontech, we're smaller. We don't have an internal HR person. We outsource that aspect. So it really comes down to that leader for what we call lead manage and accountability, LMA. So that was a quick run through of the Cyber Insights platform. One of the unique things with the Cyber Insights side is we can run that essentially simultaneously. So for those that are interested, we've been working with a couple customers in pilot here the last couple weeks. We've been running this on Ontech's network now for coming up on a month, probably a little bit over a month. So we've learned some stuff. We're gaining some better insight some places. So if this is something of interest, feel free to contact your account manager, shoot me a message, and we'll talk about how we look at getting it enabled for you. Just a couple reminders for some areas of focus. Really one of the big core reasons why we chose to move to the Zoros platform was better visibility into requests and faster time to response. No offense to our old tool set, but it just did not allow for the ticket integration. It just wasn't a clean tool. So really that request time is really critical to us. We get it when a user is out trying to do something, again, trying to do their job. They don't want to wait hours or days to potentially get this approved. Reduction in policies and nuances for more simplified management. Really, this was our goal as we both moved platforms, was to simplify all those different policy stuff that we had, but also to really try to simplify that for us. So instead of having 200 unique policies, when we really started to look at customers and their policy stuff that we made that was unique to them, there was so much commonality. So instead of having a couple hundred different ones, we basically collapsed it all down to 3 core policies. And then don't get me wrong, there are some customers that have something a little bit more unique. And then the last was the ability to bring new features, specifically by not increasing price point. So that was one of the big things as we looked at tool sets. We wanted to be able to expand feature sets. And so luckily for us here with the Zoros platform, we can get that cyber insights for essentially the cost of DNS. It's just an enablement function on our side, and then getting the reports and some of that stuff set up. So it's allowing us to bring more features to you guys without having to really increase or discuss price. So just a quick summary. Updates to the DNS management side are live. Those have been live now for I think 2 or 3 weeks minimum. Thank you for the feedback for those that gave it during the transition. Cyber Insights, like I said, we're ready to start to roll this out, but I definitely still want to continue to be open that we're learning. We're not necessarily dead set experts on this yet, but through a few of the pilots that we've done, I'd say we're ahead of pace to really start to roll this out in a larger capacity. Otherwise, I appreciate everybody's time that joined us here this morning. Like I said, if you've got questions, got something that you don't want to chat about here in the chat or via webinar, just give me a call, talk with your account manager. They're going through some training here next week to kind of start to skill up and understand the platform a little bit better outside just the DNS component.